My name is Myra Warren. I'm 31. At least this one might actually make something of herself. That is what my father said, standing over my hospital bed, 6 hours after I gave birth to my daughter. My husband clenched his fists. My mother-in-law grabbed his arm. My own mother stared out the window like she'd gone deaf. And me? I just held my baby girl against my chest and smiled. Because for 31 years, I'd been the invisible Warren, the one who sat at the end of the table, the one whose name came up only when someone needed something done quietly. But for the last 4 years, I'd been keeping a secret. And if it ever came out, it would flip everything my father believed about this family upside down. I didn't plan what happened at that brunch. I just finally stopped pretending it didn't hurt. Before I go on, please take a moment to like and subscribe, but only if you genuinely connect with this story. And if you're watching right now, drop your city and your local time in the comments. I'd love to know who's out there. Now let me take you back 4 years. To the night I found out my parents were about to lose their house. 4 years ago, I was 27. I just finished my advanced nursing certification, 6 months of night classes after 12-hour ER shifts, studying in my car during lunch breaks because the break room was always full. I called my father the day I passed. He picked up on the fourth ring. I told him. There was a pause, 3 seconds, maybe 4. And then he said, "That's nice. Hey, did Greg tell you he got promoted? Regional sales manager. They gave him the corner office." That was it. My entire accomplishment, swallowed whole by my brother's job title in under 10 seconds. I wish I could say that was unusual. It wasn't. Growing up, there was a pattern in the Warren house. I'd bring home honor roll. Dad would mention Greg's baseball trophy. I'd get accepted to nursing school on a partial scholarship. Dad would spend dinner talking about Greg's new apartment. Every single time, like clockwork. My name was a bridge sentence to get back to my brother. Thanksgiving that year made it crystal clear. We were all at my parents' place, the same split-level ranch in Dayton they'd had since 1989. Turkey, stuffing, the works. Dad stood up, raised his glass, and gave a toast. "To Greg," he said. "The pride of this family." Everyone clinked. I sat at the far end of the table, next to the bowl of mashed potatoes nobody touched. My mother reached under the table and patted my knee. "He doesn't mean it, sweetie," she whispered. But she didn't say a word to him. She never did. I told myself I was fine. I told myself it didn't matter. Then Ryan showed me something on his laptop that changed everything. Ryan, my husband, is a structural engineer. Steady hands, steady head. He'd been helping my parents fix things around their house for years. Leaky faucet, sagging porch steps, a cracked foundation wall in the basement. Dad never thanked him, but Ryan went anyway, because that's who he is. One Saturday, Ryan drove over to replace a corroded pipe under their kitchen sink. Mom was at the grocery store, Dad was napping in his recliner, and sitting right there on the kitchen counter, half hidden under a coupon flyer, was an envelope from the mortgage company. Ryan wasn't snooping, it was open. The red print was hard to miss. 3 months past due, 62 days to resolve or face foreclosure proceedings. He took a photo with his phone. That night, he showed me. I couldn't breathe. My father had retired early at 59. His back gave out after 31 years at the plant. He told everyone he was set, comfortable, that his pension and savings had it covered. "We don't need a thing," he'd say whenever anyone asked. "Warrens take care of themselves." It was a lie. His pension covered maybe 60% of their expenses. The rest had been bleeding out of savings for 2 years. I called Greg, figured maybe we could split something. His voice got tight immediately. "Yeah, I've been meaning to help, but things are tight right now. The divorce, you know." I knew. Greg's ex-wife got the condo. Greg got the debt. The golden child was drowning, too. He just had a nicer suit on while he sank. I lay awake that whole night, staring at the ceiling fan going in slow circles. I hated how my father treated me, but I couldn't watch my mother lose her home, so I called the one person I trusted with money. And she happened to be my mother-in-law. Linda Callahan is Ryan's mother. 58, widowed, retired from a 30-year career as a CPA. She's the kind of woman who wears reading glasses on a chain and can calculate a tip to the penny without looking at her phone. She raised Ryan alone after his father passed from a heart attack when Ryan was 14. She doesn't waste words. She doesn't waste money, and she doesn't tolerate cruelty. I sat at her kitchen table and told her everything. The overdue notice, the pension gap, Greg's silence, Dad's pride. Linda took off her glasses, set them on the table, looked at me for a long moment. "If you're going to do this," she said, "do it right. Don't let them know." She introduced me to Margaret Bowen, a financial advisor she'd worked with for years. Quiet, precise, trustworthy. Within 2 weeks, Margaret set up a modest trust, nothing fancy, that would route a monthly transfer of $2,800 from my savings into my parents' checking account. On their end, it would show up as a supplemental benefit. Clean, untraceable without digging. Ryan held my hand the night I signed the first authorization. "You sure?" he asked. "No," I said. "But I'd rather live with this than live with guilt." The first transfer hit in March. That same week Dad called Greg. I heard about it later from Mom. "Looks like the pension office finally fixed my benefits," Dad had said, proud as ever. Greg's response, "See? I told you it'd work out." Nobody thanked me. Nobody even knew. And that became the shape of the next 4 years. $2,800 a month. 48 months. Keeping the lights on in a house where my name was never the one they toasted. 2 years in, the transfers kept going, quiet, automatic, invisible. $67,000 and change. Nobody knew. Nobody asked. I didn't keep a running tally back then. I tried not to think about it. Every month, a notification would pop up on my banking app, and I'd swipe it away like a bill I'd already accepted. Meanwhile, the Warren family kept running on the same script. Christmas, 2 years into the transfers. We gathered at my parents' house. Same dining room, same mismatched chairs, same position for me at the end of the table. Greg sat at Dad's right. His new girlfriend, a paralegal named Tina, sat at his left, looking thrilled to be included. After the ham, Dad tapped his glass. He had an announcement. "I've been thinking about the future," he said. "When I get older, really older, someone's going to need to handle the family finances, make the big calls, so I'm putting Greg in charge." He said it like he was passing down a crown. Greg nodded solemnly, as though he hadn't maxed out 3 credit cards buying a boat he never used. Then Dad looked at me, not with cruelty exactly, something worse. Pity. "You just focus on your little job, Myra. Leave the big decisions to the men. That's how this family works." A few people chuckled, the nervous kind, the kind that fills silence when nobody knows what to say. Mom studied her napkin. Tina glanced at Greg like she was waiting for him to object. He didn't. Under the table, I was squeezing my water glass so hard my knuckles went white. Ryan placed his hand on my thigh and pressed gently. A quiet signal. I'm here. I thought the worst was over. Then I got pregnant, and everything escalated. 5 months along. I announced it in the family group chat with a photo of the ultrasound. Black and white blur, tiny fingers curled like a comma. Mom was ecstatic. Heart emojis, prayer hands, a voice memo of her crying happy tears. Greg texted, "Congrats, sis," and then immediately pivoted. He was seeing someone new, wanted to borrow the family cabin for Valentine's weekend. Could Mom check if the hot tub still worked? Dad's reply came 40 minutes later. 6 words and an emoji. "Hope she's got Ryan's brains." I stared at that message for a long time, read it once, twice, 3 times, showed it to Ryan. He didn't say anything, just set the phone face down on the counter and walked into the other room. That night, at my 20-week checkup, I sat alone in the dark ultrasound room while the tech went to get the doctor. The screen still glowed, my daughter's profile, her nose, the curve of her skull. I put my hand on my belly and whispered something I'd been thinking for weeks. "I promise you'll never sit at the end of the table." When Ryan picked me up, he was quiet for most of the drive. Then, at a red light 3 blocks from home, he said it. "Maybe it's time to stop the transfers." "Not yet. Mom needs it." "Your mom," he said, eyes on the road. "Not him." He was right. But I wasn't ready. Not yet. 3 months later, I was in a delivery room, drenched in sweat, holding my daughter for the first time. And the first thing my father said when he walked in was not congratulations. The hospital room was warm. Too warm. The kind of warmth that makes everything feel thick. The air, the sounds, the way time moves. Lily had been on my chest for 2 hours, skin to skin. Her eyes were closed. She weighed 6 pounds, 11 ounces. I'd counted every finger twice. Ryan sat beside me, his hand on the edge of the bed. Linda, my mother-in-law, was in the armchair by the window, knitting something pink. Mom had arrived an hour earlier, teary, quiet, holding my hand without saying much. That was enough. Dad showed up 4 hours late. Traffic, he said. He didn't hug me, didn't congratulate Ryan, didn't even glance at my mother, who'd been waiting for him since noon. He walked straight to the bed, looked down at Lily, tilted his head the way you'd inspect a used car. At least this one might actually make something of herself. The room went silent, not the comfortable kind, the kind where the oxygen leaves. Ryan stood up so fast the chair scraped the floor. Linda was already on her feet, one hand on Ryan's shoulder, firm, steady. Not now. Mom turned to the window. I watched her reflection in the glass, jaw tight, eyes shut. I looked up at my father. He was smiling, that half-smile he wore when he thought he was being clever. I didn't cry, I didn't shout. I just held Lily a little tighter and said, "She already has, Dad. She's here." He waved his hand, a flick, really, like brushing away a gnat, and turned to Mom. "When's Greg coming? I want him to see his niece." He stayed 20 minutes. He never held her. The door barely clicked shut before Ryan was in the hallway. I heard it from the bed. One sharp thud, fist against drywall. Then Linda's voice, low and even. "Not here. Not now." A minute later, he came back. Knuckles red, eyes wet. He knelt beside the bed and pressed his forehead against my arm. "I'm done watching him do this to you." I put my hand on the back of his head. Lily was still asleep against my chest, breathing in that tiny rhythm newborns have. Fast, shallow, relentless. Linda sat back down. She took her time, folded the knitting into her lap. Then she looked at me, not with sympathy, not with pity, but with the kind of clarity that only comes from a woman who's done her own math. "Sweetheart," she said, "you've transferred over $100,000 to that man, and he walked into your recovery room 6 hours after you gave birth to his granddaughter, and that's what he said." I looked at the ceiling, blinked hard. "I know." Silence. "I know." Lily stirred. I shifted her to nurse. The room went quiet again, just monitors beeping, the hum of fluorescent lights, the sound of my daughter learning to eat. Then I spoke. Not loud, not angry, just level. "He's planning a brunch for the baby, a big one. Family, neighbors, everyone." Ryan shook his head. "You don't have to go." "Oh, I'm going." He looked at me. Linda looked at me. I looked at my daughter. "Because if he's going to use my baby to perform his perfect family show, he should at least know who's been funding the stage." 2 weeks after Lily was born, I made a phone call I'd been turning over in my head since the hospital. Margaret Bowen picked up on the second ring, professional as always. She didn't do small talk, which is one of the reasons I trusted her. "I need a summary," I said. "Every transfer, every month, every dollar. His account number, the trust routing, all of it." There was a pause on her end. Not hesitation, calculation. "You're sure? Once this is out, there's no taking it back." "I'm not trying to take anything back, Margaret. I'm just done hiding." The email arrived the next morning. I opened it at the kitchen table while Lily slept in the bassinet beside me. Ryan was at work. The house was quiet. 48 line items, 48 months, $2,800 each. Total, $134,400. Every entry time-stamped, routed, verified, clean documentation, the kind of paper trail that doesn't leave room for arguments. I stared at it. My thumb hovered over the screen. I could feel my heartbeat in my fingertips. Then I closed the phone, set it face down on the table, walked to the bassinet and watched my daughter sleep. Not yet. That's what I told myself. Not yet. I saved the file. Didn't tell anyone except Ryan, who nodded once, and Linda, who said, "Good." I still didn't plan to use it at the brunch. I want you to understand that. I was genuinely hoping, the way you hope against every shred of evidence that my father would walk into that party and just be a normal grandfather for one afternoon. But then he called about the seating arrangements. Dad called on a Tuesday evening. I was nursing Lily in the rocking chair, one hand holding the phone on speaker. "Brunch is set for Sunday," he said. 30 guests. I reserved extra folding chairs from the church. I'll handle the speech. You just bring the baby and smile. "Can I say a few words too?" I asked. A beat of silence, then that tone, the one that sounds patient but means the opposite. "About what, Myra?" "Let me handle it. I know what people want to hear." I heard Mom's voice in the background, muffled, asking something about napkins. Then Dad's voice dropped, the way it does when he thinks he's being quiet but isn't, and I heard it clearly. "Make sure Greg sits next to me at the head table. Myra can sit with the cousins." He didn't know I was still on the line, or maybe he didn't care. My daughter's brunch, my daughter's welcome party, and I was being assigned to the overflow table like a distant relative who showed up uninvited. I ended the call, set the phone on the armrest, looked down at Lily. She'd fallen asleep mid-feed, lips still parted, milk-drunk and peaceful. I sat there for a long time. The house was still. The ceiling fan clicked on every third rotation. Ryan kept meaning to fix it. Then I picked up my phone and texted Ryan 3 lines. "We're going to that brunch. I'm bringing my phone. And ask your mom to print the backup." He replied in under a minute. Just one word. "Done." I put the phone down and rocked my daughter in the dark. Sunday was 5 days away. Sunday morning. Bright, clear, 72 degrees. The kind of Ohio weather that makes everyone believe in fresh starts. My parents' backyard looked like a magazine spread, or at least Dad's version of one. White tablecloths, pink balloons tied to every chair, a hand-painted banner strung between the oak tree and the fence post. "Welcome, baby Lily." Dad had outdone himself. Not for Lily, of course, for the audience. 30 guests, aunts, uncles, cousins. 3 neighbors, including Mrs. Dobson from across the street, who'd brought a casserole and her reading glasses. 2 of Dad's old buddies from the plant, Greg and his new girlfriend, whose name I'd already forgotten. Everyone dressed in Sunday casual, holding lemonade, complimenting the yard. Ryan carried Lily in her car seat. I walked beside him, Linda 1 step behind. We came through the side gate, and I saw it immediately. The seating. 2 long tables. The main one, front and center, closest to the house, had place cards. Dad at the head, Greg to his right, Mom to his left, Greg's girlfriend next to Greg. Open seat for one of Dad's buddies. The second table, smaller, pushed toward the back fence near the recycling bins, had no place cards, just plastic cups and paper plates. That's where I was supposed to sit. At my own daughter's welcome party. By the recycling. Aunt Helen, Dad's younger sister, 61, no filter, God bless her, spotted me before I'd even set down the diaper bag. "Honey," she said, hugging me sideways, "why are you all the way back here? This is your baby's party." I looked at the head table. Dad was arranging his speech notes beside his plate. "Ask Dad," I said. Helen's eyes narrowed. She didn't ask. She didn't need to. They served quiche and fruit salad. Dad waited until every plate was full. Then he stood, tapped his glass with a butter knife, and smiled the smile he saves for audiences. Speech time. 30 faces turned. Forks went down. Even Lily stopped fussing in Ryan's arms. 30 years, Dad began. "I've been waiting for this family to give me a granddaughter." He pointed at Greg. "Your turn next, son." Laughter. Easy, comfortable, rehearsed. Then he talked about the Warrens, the legacy, the values. His voice swelled the way it always does when he's performing. The retired foreman giving one last shift speech. "My son, Greg," he said, lifting his glass. "The backbone of this family, the one I know I can count on." Greg raised his glass back. Tina squeezed his arm. Mom beamed. Then Dad's eyes found me. Back table, plastic cup in hand. "And Myra, well..." He paused, chuckled. "We all know she's the quiet one. I just hope little Lily here got her drive from Ryan's side of the family." A ripple of laughter, mostly nervous. Helen didn't laugh. Mrs. Dobson set down her fork. But Dad wasn't done. He walked toward Ryan, who was holding Lily near the dessert table. Dad leaned in, studying her face like he was reading a resume. "But look at her. Strong chin, Bright eyes. This one's got potential. He straightened up, grinning. More than her mama at that age, I can tell you that. He laughed. Alone. The yard went quiet. Not the respectful kind. The kind where people suddenly become very interested in their fruit salad. I sat at my table, both hands flat, fingers still. No trembling. No tears. I looked straight at my father. And I waited. Greg stood up next. Of course he did. He lifted his glass, the real glass, from the main table, and cleared his throat. To Dad, he said. The man who keeps this family together. Everyone drank. I watched the lemonade tremble in my plastic cup. Then Greg turned to me, grinning that easy, golden boy grin. He crossed the yard to my table and clapped me on the shoulder like I was a teammate who'd fumbled, but he wasn't going to make a thing of it. Hey, sis. Don't worry. Lily's got the Warren genes. She'll be fine. He squeezed my shoulder and walked away, back to the main table, back to his seat at the right hand of the father. Aunt Helen appeared beside me. She crouched down, voice low. Are you okay, sweetheart? I'm perfect, Aunt Helen. She looked at me. I could tell she didn't believe me. I could also tell she was angry. Not at me. Ryan leaned close to my ear, Lily cradled in his other arm. Say the word and we leave. Right now. I looked at my daughter. She was awake, staring at the pink balloons with that wide, unfocused wonder newborns have. She didn't know what her grandfather had just said about her mother. She didn't know any of it. She was just watching balloons. I looked at Linda. She sat 2 chairs down, her handbag on her lap, calm, upright, watching me the way a pilot watches instruments. She gave me a nod, small, certain, one nod. That was all I needed. I took a breath, stood up, pushed my chair in, neatly, quietly, the way I do everything. Then I walked to the main table. Dad, can I say a few words? He looked surprised. Now? We're about to cut cake. It won't take long. He waved his hand like he always does. Make it quick. So I did. I stood at the head of the main table. No microphone, no notes. Just me, my voice, and 30 people who suddenly didn't know where to look. Thank you all for being here for Lily, I said. My voice was steady. I made sure of that. She's 3 weeks old, and she's already surrounded by more love than I ever expected. I let that land. A few smiles. Mrs. Dobson pressed her hand to her chest. Dad just said something about hoping Lily got her drive from Ryan's side. I turned to my father. He was still smiling. The frozen kind. The kind that means he's calculating. That's fine. He's been saying versions of that my whole life. The smile cracked. Just a fraction. But there's something everyone here should know. Something I've kept quiet for 4 years. Dad shifted in his chair, his arms crossed. Myra, this isn't the time for drama. You're right, Dad. It's the time for honesty. Mom reached for his arm. Myra, please. I looked at her. Really looked. Mom, I love you, but I need you to listen this time. Just this once. She let go of Dad's sleeve. Her hands dropped to her lap. I saw her chin tremble, but she didn't speak. 30 people. No one moved. A balloon popped somewhere, one of the pink ones tied to the fence, and a cousin's kid yelped. But nobody turned. Every pair of eyes was on me. I felt it then, that weightless electric clarity you get when you've been holding something for so long that finally letting go feels less like a choice and more like gravity. 4 years, $134,000. I saw. And a truth that was about to change everything. 4 years ago, I said. I found out this house was 3 months from foreclosure. The word landed like a stone in still water. I watched it ripple across the yard. Aunt Helen's mouth opening, Mrs. Dobson gripping her armrest, Greg's girlfriend looking at Greg like she was seeing him for the first time. Dad's pension wasn't covering it. Savings were gone. The mortgage company had already sent the final notice. Dad's jaw tightened. That's private family. I'm not finished. He stopped. I don't think anyone had ever said that to him before. Greg couldn't help. I glanced at my brother. No offense, Greg. Greg stared at his plate, his ears turned red. Tina pulled her hand off his arm. So, I set up an anonymous monthly transfer. $2,800 every single month, for 48 months. Whispers. Helen covered her mouth. One of Dad's plant buddies set his glass down slowly, deliberately, like he needed something to do with his hands. I turned back to my father. Dad, you told everyone your pension got adjusted, that the benefits office fixed your account. I held his gaze. It wasn't them. I let the silence do the work. It was me, the quiet one, the one who'd never make something of herself. Dad opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. That's ridiculous. I never... Check your bank account, Dad. I didn't shout, didn't lean forward, said it the same way I'd say, pass the salt. I turned to Linda. She reached into her handbag, pulled out a printed sheet, 48 lines dated, stamped, and set it on the table in front of him. His phone buzzed in his pocket. He pulled it out. His face went white. A notification from Margaret Bowen. Per Ms. Warren's request, the supplemental trust transfer has been permanently discontinued effective today. Donald Warren stood at the head of his own table, phone in one hand, printed bank statement in the other, and for the first time in my life, he had nothing to say. His face didn't crumble all at once. It happened in stages, confusion, then recognition, then something I'd never seen on my father. Shame. Greg broke first. He pushed back from the table, chair scraping the patio. Wait, what? You've been... How? He looked at me, then at Dad, then back at me. 4 years? I didn't answer. I didn't need to. The paper answered. Aunt Helen stood up. She's 5'3", and she filled the entire backyard. Donald, is this true? Your daughter's been paying your mortgage this whole time? Dad's voice came out thin. This is none of your business, Helen. You just spent 10 minutes telling everyone she'd never amount to anything. Helen pointed at the statement. I'd say it is my business. Murmurs spread through the tables. Mrs. Dobson shook her head slowly, the way you do when you're disappointed in someone you've known for 30 years. One of Dad's plant buddies picked up his jacket from the back of his chair and quietly put it on, like he was getting ready to leave. Mom started to cry, not dramatically, just tears falling one after another into her untouched quiche. She wasn't crying because she was embarrassed. She was crying because she knew. She'd always known I was the one who showed up. She just never had the courage to say it out loud. Dad looked up from his phone. His eyes found mine. You did this to humiliate me. No, Dad. My voice didn't waver. I did the transfers because I love Mom. I stopped them because I love myself. I didn't leave. Not yet. I stood right where I was, 3 feet from my father, 30 witnesses, a warm breeze pushing the pink balloons sideways. Dad, I'm not doing this to punish you. He was still holding the printout. His thumb had smudged the ink on line 37. I'm doing this because Lily is 3 weeks old, and I refuse to let her grow up watching her mother be treated like she doesn't matter. Helen sat back down. She folded her arms and nodded, one firm dip of the chin, like a judge who'd heard enough. If you want a relationship with your granddaughter, I said, it starts with respecting her mother. Not because I pay your bills, not because I proved something today, because I'm your daughter. That should have been enough. Dad's mouth opened, then closed, then opened again. Nothing came out. I'd seen him speechless maybe twice in my entire life. Both times someone else had been in control of the conversation. This time, it was me. I'm not asking for an apology today, I said. I'm telling you the rules have changed. I turned to Mom. She was wiping her eyes with a paper napkin, mascara smudged, hands trembling. Mom, I love you. The door is always open. I paused. But I'm done sitting at the kids' table in my own life. She nodded. Not the dismissive kind she gave at Thanksgiving. A real nod, the kind that costs something. Greg sat frozen. Tina had moved her chair 6 inches away from his without anyone noticing. I looked at the yard, the banner, the balloons, the folding chairs from the church, a party my father had thrown to showcase himself, in a house my father would have lost without me. Time to go. I walked back to the overflow table, picked up the diaper bag, checked Lily's bottle was capped, folded the blanket Ryan had draped over the car seat. Small, ordinary motions, The kind of things a mother does 100 times a day without thinking. Ryan was already standing, Lily in his arms. He hadn't said a word through the whole thing. He didn't need to. He'd been waiting for this moment longer than I had. Linda rose from her chair, gathered her handbag, and walked over to me. She wrapped both arms around my shoulders and pulled me close. Her perfume, lavender, always lavender, mixed with the backyard honeysuckle. "Your father-in-law would have been so proud," she whispered. I bit my lip, nodded into her shoulder. Linda's husband, Tom, had died when Ryan was 14. I never met him, but in that moment, I felt him. We moved toward the side gate. Nobody stopped us. Nobody tried. 30 people parted like water, and we walked straight through. I passed within 2 feet of my father. He was still standing at the head of the table, bank statement in one hand, phone dark in the other, staring at the numbers. I stopped. "Dad?" He looked up. His eyes were red. "I didn't do all of this for a thank you." I held his gaze. "But a thank you would have been nice." I turned and kept walking. Ryan opened the gate. Linda followed. Lily made a small sound. Not a cry, just a murmur. And I adjusted her hat against the sun. The car was parked on the street. Ryan buckled Lily in. I climbed into the passenger seat, closed the door. And then I cried, for the first time. Not because it hurt, because it was over. Ryan started the engine, reached across the console, took my hand, didn't say a word, just drove us home. The calls started before we even got home. Aunt Helen was first. I picked up on the second ring because it was Helen, and Helen doesn't call unless she means it. "Honey," she said, "I just want you to know. I called your father before I left the driveway, told him he owes you an apology, a real one, not the kind where he explains why he was actually right." I laughed. For the first time in weeks, a real laugh. "Thank you, Aunt Helen. Don't thank me. You did the hard part. I just yelled at a man who deserved it." By Monday, 3 more calls had come in. Mrs. Dobson sent a flower arrangement with a handwritten card tucked into the baby's breath. "I raised 3 daughters. I've never been prouder of someone else's child." I put the card on the refrigerator and cried a little more. One of Dad's old plant buddies, Frank, a big man with a quiet voice, called Dad directly. I heard about it later from Mom. "Dawn, is it true? Your girl's been covering your mortgage?" Dad hung up on him. Frank didn't call back. Then, on Wednesday, Greg called me. His voice was different. Smaller, stripped of the easy charm he usually wore like aftershave. "Why didn't you tell me? Would it have changed anything?" Silence. Long enough to count. "I don't know. Maybe." That was the most honest thing my brother had said to me in 35 years. I could hear something behind it. Not anger, not defensiveness. Recognition. The sound of a man realizing the pedestal he'd been standing on was built by someone else. "Greg," I said, "it's okay." "No," he said. "It's really not." He hung up, but it didn't feel like an ending. Mom told me later what happened after we left the brunch. The guests trickled out within 20 minutes. Quick goodbyes, tight smiles, car doors closing up and down the block. Helen was the last to leave. She hugged Mom at the front door and said, "Call me if you need anything, Patty." She didn't say goodbye to Dad. By evening, it was just the 2 of them. The backyard still had the banner up, "Welcome Baby Lily," flapping in the wind like a punchline nobody laughed at. Dad sat at the kitchen table. The printed statement was still in front of him. 48 lines. He hadn't moved it. Mom sat across from him. She told me she poured 2 cups of coffee and didn't say anything for almost 10 minutes. She just waited. Then, for the first time in 40 years of marriage, my mother pushed back. "She kept us in this house, Donald. 4 years." Dad stared at the paper. "She had no right to tell everyone." Mom's voice went flat, hard. A voice I'd never heard her use. "She had every right. You stood up in front of 30 people and told them your granddaughter might succeed in spite of her mother." She leaned forward. "What did you expect?" Dad looked at the window. The backyard was empty now. The chairs were still out, plates still on the tables, a balloon caught in the gutter. The house he'd almost lost, the yard he'd almost surrendered, kept alive, every month, every check, every dollar. By the daughter he'd seated at the back table. "Call her, Donald." "And say what?" Mom's voice cracked, but it held. "Start with 'I'm sorry.'" He didn't call. Not that night. But he didn't sleep either. A week passed. The dust was still settling, but life doesn't stop for family drama. Diapers still needed changing. Night feeds still came at 2 and 5 a.m. Lily still needed me. And honestly, I needed her. It was a Thursday morning, 6:15. The house was quiet. Ryan had already left for a site visit. I was in the rocking chair, nursing Lily in that half-dark, half-golden light that comes through east-facing windows at dawn. And she smiled. Not gas. Not a reflex. She looked up at me, eyes focusing for the first time on something specific, something real. And the corners of her mouth pulled up. Just slightly. Just enough. I sobbed. The ugly, shaking kind. Not because I was sad, because for the first time in weeks, something beautiful happened that had nothing to do with pain. Ryan came home that evening, and I showed him the photo I'd taken. His eyes went soft. He kissed Lily's forehead, then mine. I posted it in the family group chat. No caption needed, but I wrote one anyway. First smile, my whole world. The reactions came fast. Helen, heart emoji, fire emoji, 5 exclamation points. Mrs. Dobson, she wasn't in the chat, but Helen forwarded it, and she texted me separately. Greg sent a red heart. Mom called immediately, crying, laughing, talking so fast I couldn't understand half of it. Dad didn't react. Didn't call. But Mom told me later. Your father sat on the porch and stared at that photo on his phone for 10 minutes. Didn't say a word. Just looked. I didn't know what to do with that. So I told Ryan what I'd been thinking for days. I don't need him to change. I just need him to stop pretending I don't exist. Then, on a Tuesday night, my doorbell rang at 9 p.m. I opened the door. It was my father. Alone. He was wearing his old brown jacket, the one with the frayed cuffs that Mom keeps threatening to throw out. No flowers, no gift bag, no props. Just Donald Warren standing on my porch under the yellow light, looking 10 years older than he had 3 weeks ago. Ryan appeared behind me, one hand resting on my shoulder, not pushing, not pulling, just there. Can I come in? Dad asked. That depends on why you're here. He looked down at the welcome mat. His work boots were untied, something I'd never seen before. My father tied his boots before he tied his tie, always. I'm here because... He trailed off, swallowed. Patty told me I should come, and Helen, and Greg. That's a lot of people telling you what to do, I said. What about you, Dad? Why are you here? He didn't answer right away. A moth bounced against the porch light. Somewhere down the block, a dog barked twice and stopped. When he looked up, his eyes were red. Not crying red, exhaustion red. The kind you get from 3 weeks of not sleeping and not admitting why. I'm here because I'm ashamed. 3 words. Quiet. No performance. No hand gestures. No audience. I searched his face for the act, for the calculation, for the half-smile he used when he was managing a room. It wasn't there. I stepped back, opened the door wider. Didn't say come in, didn't need to. The open door said it. He stepped inside. Ryan squeezed my shoulder once, then disappeared upstairs with Lily, giving us the room. Dad stood in my hallway, hands in his jacket pockets, looking at the family photos on the wall. Me and Ryan, Lily's hospital photo, Linda at Christmas, none of him. He noticed, I could tell. He didn't mention it. I made coffee, not because he deserved it, but because my hands needed something to do. We sat at my kitchen table, the cheap IKEA one Ryan and I had assembled the week we moved in. No tablecloth, no place cards, no head and foot, just 2 chairs, 2 mugs, and 31 years of things unsaid. Dad wrapped both hands around the mug, stared into it like the answer might be floating there. I don't know how to say this, he said. I never learned. Try. He took a breath, let it out slow. I looked at that bank statement every day since the brunch. $134,000. He shook his head. And I couldn't even hold her when she was born. Why not? The question sat between us. I watched him wrestle with it, jaw working, eyes shifting, pride fighting honesty in real time. Because I was scared. I waited. You grew up and became everything I couldn't, Myra. You put yourself through school, built a career, bought a house, married a good man, and you did it all without me. His voice thinned. Without needing a single thing from me, and I couldn't stand it. The refrigerator hummed. Upstairs I could hear Ryan walking Lily in slow circles, her white noise machine a soft static through the ceiling. That's the most honest thing you've ever said to me, I said. He nodded. Slow. I'm not asking you to start the money again. Good, because that's not happening. No anger in my voice, no cruelty, just fact. He took a sip of coffee, set the mug down. His hand was shaking, just slightly, a tremor he'd never have let anyone see at the head of his own table. I know, he said. For a moment, neither of us spoke. And the silence wasn't empty. It was the fullest our kitchen had ever been. I'm not going to pretend this is fixed, I said. One conversation doesn't erase 31 years. I know. Here's what I need. I didn't rehearse this, but it came out clear, like I'd been writing it in my head since I was 12 years old, and overheard him tell Uncle Ray that Greg was the one with the potential. You don't compare Lily to anyone, not to Greg's future kids, not to her cousins, not to me. She's her own person, full stop. He nodded. You don't dismiss me in front of family. Not as a joke, not as a habit. Not ever again. Another nod, slower this time. And if you want to be in Lily's life, you show up. Not for the speech, not for the audience. You show up at bedtime and tummy time and the boring Tuesday afternoons when nothing happens. That's where being a grandfather counts. He looked at the table, traced a scratch in the wood with his fingernail. What about the money? He asked. Quiet, almost ashamed to ask. If Mom needs help, she can call me directly. We'll figure it out. But I'm not sending anonymous checks so you can pretend you don't need your daughter. He flinched. I saw it. A small contraction, like I'd touched something still raw. Then I said the hardest part. And Dad, I need you to say it. Not for me. For you. He looked up. His eyes were wet. Not streaming, just bright, glassy, the way water looks right before it spills. I'm sorry, Myra. His voice broke on my name. I'm sorry I made you feel like you weren't enough. I nodded, didn't hug him. Not yet. But I nodded. That's a start. I stood up, poured him more coffee, set the mug in front of him, sat back down. It wasn't a happy ending. It was an honest beginning. It's been 2 months since that night at my kitchen table. I won't pretend everything transformed overnight. It didn't. My father is 63 years old and has been running on the same operating system since 1961. Change doesn't come easy. It comes awkward. He started visiting Lily on Sundays. The first time he stood in the doorway of the nursery for a full minute, hands at his sides, like he'd forgotten how to enter a room without commanding it. Then he sat in the rocking chair. I placed Lily in his arms. He held her stiffly at first, elbows locked, jaw tight, and then she grabbed his pinky. His whole body softened. I watched it happen in real time, like ice cracking in spring. He brought her a teddy bear the second visit. Way too big, almost the size of Lily herself. She screamed when she saw it. He looked devastated. Ryan and I laughed for 10 minutes. He doesn't say I love you to me. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But last week, when I was carrying Lily to the door to say goodbye, he stopped at the porch steps, turned around, looked at me. She's lucky, he said. She's got your stubbornness. I raised an eyebrow. I'll take that as a compliment. It is one. First time. A small thing. But I heard it. Greg calls me every week now. Nothing big, just, how's Lily? How are you? Simple. Real. We're not best friends. We're something better. We're honest. Mom sent a handwritten card. Not long. Just, I should have spoken up sooner. I'm sorry. Love, Mom. I taped it to the refrigerator, right next to the photo of Lily's first smile. And here's what I learned. Not a lesson. Just something true. You don't have to set fire to the whole house to get warm. Sometimes you just need to stop standing in the cold. If this story reminded you of someone, a parent, a sibling, a version of yourself, I'd love to hear it. Were you the invisible one, or did you finally speak up? Drop your story in the comments. And if this one hit close to home, there are more stories just like it, waiting for you in the description. I'll see you in the next one. My name is Corinne Andrews. I'm 28. I woke up from a 3-week coma to an empty hospital room. No father, no brothers, no flowers, no cards, no half-eaten bag of chips on the visitor chair. Nothing. Just a single sheet of heavy stationery on my bedside table, watermarked, printed with Andrews Residence, Greenwich, Connecticut at the top. My father's handwriting underneath. Corinne, we've decided to stop covering your medical expenses. Your brothers agree it's time you handle things on your own. Good luck. Dad. I read it 4 times, then I cried for an hour. But my father made one mistake. He forgot what my mother left behind. And he definitely forgot about the man in the gray suit who walked into my room on day 3. Before I go on, please take a moment to like and subscribe, but only if you genuinely connect with this story. Now, let me take you back to the beginning, to the house I grew up in, and the family that taught me silence was the same thing as love. I'm an ICU nurse. Night shift, 12 hours on, 12 off, at a mid-size hospital in Stamford, Connecticut. I live alone in a 1-bedroom apartment with thin walls and a radiator that clanks at 2 a.m. I pay my own rent. I buy my own groceries. I drive a 9-year-old Honda Civic with a dent in the passenger door that I never got fixed because there was always something more important. A power bill, a new pair of work shoes, another month's student loan payment. The Andrews family lives 26 minutes away, but it might as well be another planet. My father's house, the house I grew up in, is a 5-bedroom colonial in Greenwich. Stone facade, wrought iron gate, heated pool in the back, a 3-car garage where his Range Rover sits next to my stepmother's Mercedes and my brother Preston's BMW. The dining table is walnut, custom-made, seats 12. Every Sunday, Diane sets 4 places. Harold at the head, Diane to his right, Preston across from her, sometimes Grant, my younger brother, if he's in town. There was never a 5th chair. I stopped being surprised by that years ago. You can only show up uninvited to your own family's dinner so many times before you get the message. The last time I tried, Diane smiled at me from the doorway and said, "Oh, Corinne, we didn't expect you. Let me see if we have enough." There were 2 untouched ribeye steaks on the counter behind her. My father didn't look up from his phone. That was 3 years ago. After that, I just stopped. Stopped calling on Sundays. Stopped driving to Greenwich. Stopped pretending that if I was good enough, quiet enough, useful enough, they'd eventually make room. But I should explain why I was always the one trying. Why I spent 16 years believing I owed them something. For that, I need to go back to when I was 12. My mother's name was Margaret Ellis Andrews. She was warm in the way that doesn't announce itself, the kind of person who'd leave notes in your lunchbox and remember exactly how you liked your eggs. She came from money, the Ellis side, though she never talked about it. What I remember most is her hands on the piano keys, teaching me scales on Saturday mornings, and the Cartier watch she always wore, thin gold band, a gift from my grandmother Eleanor. She never took it off. On March 7th, I had a piano recital at school. A small thing, 12 kids in a gymnasium. But I'd practiced for weeks. My father said he'd pick me up at 8:30. He didn't come. I waited in the school lobby for 45 minutes, calling his cell, voicemail every time. Finally, I called my mother. She'd already been home for hours, thought everything was handled. She didn't hesitate. "Stay inside, baby. I'm coming." It was raining, not drizzling, pouring, the kind of Connecticut March storm that turns roads into rivers. My mother drove her sedan out into it because her 12-year-old was standing alone in a school lobby and her husband wouldn't answer his phone. She never made it. A pickup truck hydroplaned through a red light on Route 106. The impact was on the driver's side. She was pronounced dead at Stamford Hospital at 9:47 p.m. My father arrived at the hospital an hour later. I was sitting in a plastic chair in the hallway, still wearing my recital dress, holding a paper cup of water a nurse had given me. He stood over me. He didn't kneel, he didn't hold me. He said, "Your mother drove out in that storm because of you." My grandmother Eleanor held me at the funeral 3 days later and whispered, "Your mother made sure you'd be taken care of." I didn't understand what she meant. I was 12, and I'd just learned that love could be a thing you get punished for needing. Diane Mercer entered our lives 2 years later. She was polished in a way my mother never tried to be. Blowout every Thursday, Chanel flats, a smile that arrived half a second before her eyes caught up. She brought gifts the first time she came to dinner. A cashmere scarf for me, a leather wallet for Grant. She called me sweetie and told me I had my mother's cheekbones. Within 6 months, she'd moved in. Within a year, she and my father were married. Within 2, everything that had been my mother's was gone. It happened in pieces, so slowly I didn't notice until it was done. First the photos. Margaret's portrait over the fireplace replaced by a landscape Diane picked up in Nantucket. Then the piano. We need the space for Preston's office, sweetie. You understand. Then my bedroom. One afternoon I came home from school and my things had been moved to the attic room on the 3rd floor. Diane said it would be more private for me. The room had a sloped ceiling and no closet. Preston was her son from a previous marriage, 4 years older than me, already in college when Diane married my father. But Harold treated him like the firstborn he'd always wanted. Preston's going to take over the business someday, he'd say at dinners. Preston understands how the world works. The family Christmas card that year had 4 people in it. I was at a friend's house when they took the photo. No one told me. I asked my father once, I was maybe 15, whether my mother had left any papers, any documents, anything. He set down his fork, looked at me with that flat, steady gaze that could make a boardroom go silent. Your mother didn't leave anything, Corinne. She left debt. I cleaned it up. Don't bring her up again. You've done enough. So I didn't. 16 years. That's how long I carried that sentence in my chest like a stone I couldn't cough up. Your mother drove out in that storm because of you. It shaped everything. Why I didn't fight for my bedroom, why I didn't push back when the piano disappeared, why I turned down the partial scholarship to nursing school and went to a cheaper program instead, because my father said, nursing is fine for someone with your limitations. Don't waste resources. I believed him. I believed all of it. Because when you're told at 12 that you caused the worst thing that ever happened to your family, you spend the rest of your life trying to make it right. You don't set boundaries. You don't ask questions. You say yes, sir, and thank you, and you take whatever scraps of attention they toss your way, and you convince yourself that's what love looks like. That was my life until March 14th of this year. I was driving home after a 12-hour ICU shift. It was almost midnight. I was tired, the kind of tired that lives behind your eyes. And I didn't see the box truck run the red light on Elm Street until it was already filling my windshield. I don't remember the impact. I don't remember the ambulance. I'm told my heart stopped once in the ER and they brought me back. I'm told my father was called. He was still listed as my emergency contact, a detail I'd never updated because some part of me still believed he'd come. He came once. Week 1. Grant told me later that Harold stood in the doorway, looked at the machines I was hooked to, and said, "This is going to be expensive." Then he left. Week 2, only Grant visited. Week 3, no one. And then I woke up to that note. But here's the thing. A week before the accident, while packing a box of old things from my apartment closet, I'd found something. A torn envelope at the bottom of a carton I'd taken from the Greenwich attic years ago. It had my name on it, my old address at the estate, and a logo I didn't recognize. Some bank or financial firm. The letter inside was gone. Just the envelope, ripped open and empty. I tossed it aside, figured it was junk mail. I wish I'd looked closer. I need you to understand what it's like to wake up from a coma. It's not like the movies. There's no dramatic eye-opening, no gasping breath while loved ones clutch your hand. It's slow, foggy. My throat was raw from the intubation tube. My left wrist was in a cast. Every joint in my body felt like it had been filled with wet sand. The fluorescent lights above me buzzed, and for a long time, that was the only sound. No voices, no footsteps, no one saying she's awake. I turned my head, slowly, because even that hurt, and saw the room. Empty visitor chair. A wilted arrangement of carnations on the windowsill, the kind the hospital gift shop sells for $12. The cellophane was dusty. No one had touched it in days. Then I saw the note. I I read it the way you read something that can't possibly be real. We've decided to stop covering your medical expenses. Your brothers agree it's time you handle things on your own. Good luck. Dad. Heavy cream stationery with the Andrews family letterhead embossed at the top. My father's handwriting, precise, slanted slightly left, the same hand that used to sign my report cards without reading them. I pressed the nurse call button. A woman named Linda came in, checked my vitals, and told me I'd been unconscious for 22 days. Has anyone been here? I asked. My voice sounded like gravel. She hesitated. A woman came by about a week ago, signed some discharge of responsibility paperwork, and told us to forward all future bills to you directly. She brought those flowers. Linda nodded toward the wilted carnations. She seemed in a hurry. Diane. Of course. I held that note against my chest and cried for an hour. Not because they'd left. I think some part of me always knew they would. I cried because I finally understood. They were never really there. Lying in that hospital bed, the memories came in waves. Every moment I'd swallowed my own voice to keep the peace. My nursing school graduation. I'd finished top of my cohort, clinical honors, 3 letters of recommendation from attending physicians. I'd texted my father the date and time 2 months in advance. The morning of, he replied. Something came up. Congrats. No period, no exclamation point. Grant was traveling. Diane didn't respond at all. I walked across the stage to polite applause from strangers and took a selfie in the parking lot in my cap and gown, alone, leaning against my Civic. I still have that photo. I look like I'm trying very hard to smile. Thanksgiving, 2 years ago. Diane hosted 20 guests at the Greenwich House. The table was set with her new Waterford crystal and fresh eucalyptus runners. She introduced Preston to everyone. This is Preston, Harold's eldest. He's in commercial real estate now. We're so proud. While I carried platters in from the kitchen. One of Harold's business partners asked who I was. My father said, "That's Corinne. She helps out." Not my daughter. Not even she's a nurse. She helps out, like the caterer. After dinner, I washed dishes for an hour while Preston showed the guests his new BMW, a gift from Dad for closing his first deal. I'd asked my father for help with a security deposit 6 months earlier. His response? Maybe if you'd chosen a real career, you wouldn't need to ask. I kept going back. Every holiday, every birthday I wasn't invited to, but showed up for anyway. Because somewhere inside me, 12-year-old Corinne was still standing in that school lobby, waiting for someone to come. And the worst part? I thought that was love. I thought that's what I deserved. 2 days after I woke up, I tried to call my family. Grant's number went straight to a message. This number is not accepting calls from this line. I stared at my phone. Blocked. My own brother's number. Blocked. I told myself maybe he'd changed phones. Maybe it was a mistake. But my hands were shaking. I called my father's cell. Voicemail. I didn't leave a message. What would I even say? Hi, Dad, I almost died. Just checking in? I called the house. Diane picked up on the 3rd ring. I could hear her heels on tile. The kitchen, probably. She sounded exactly the way she always does. Warm, measured, completely in control. Corinne? How are you feeling? We heard you were awake. I was in a coma, Diane. For 3 weeks. I almost died. A pause. Then in that voice, the one she uses when she wants you to feel like you're being unreasonable. And we're glad you're okay. We really are. But your father and I discussed this, and we think it's best for everyone if you learn to stand on your own 2 feet. You're 28 years old. Most people your age don't rely on family for medical bills. You signed papers transferring my hospital debt to me while I was unconscious. We were trying to help you grow, sweetie. You can't keep leaning on your father forever. I gripped the phone so hard my cast ached. Is that what this is? Growth? Diane's voice dropped half a register. Preston's wedding is in 3 months. We have expenses. Your father has a very important deal closing. This isn't a good time for drama, Corinne. Then she added, almost as an afterthought. And I should tell you, we've let the family know that you decided to go your own way. Everyone understands. She hung up. She'd already rewritten the story. In Diane's version, I was the one who left. Let me tell you about the math. 3 weeks in the ICU. Emergency surgery on my spleen. A fractured wrist. 2 cracked ribs. Mild traumatic brain injury. The total bill, before insurance, just over $187,000. My employer-sponsored plan covered a portion, but after deductibles and out-of-network charges for the specialists Harold's initial visit had authorized, back when he was still pretending to be involved, I was staring at roughly $43,000 in personal liability. My savings account had $6,200 in it. I couldn't work for at least 8 weeks. My car was totaled. The auto insurance claim was still processing. My apartment lease was up in 6 weeks, and I didn't have first and last for a new place. I was lying in a hospital bed in a gown that tied in the back, scrolling through a financial aid application on a phone with a cracked screen, and the sum total of my worldly support was a wilted bouquet from a woman who'd signed away my medical coverage while I was unconscious. I set the phone down. I looked at the ceiling, those acoustic tiles with the little holes that you count when you can't sleep. I thought about my mother, about what she would say if she could see me now. And then I thought about what my father had told me for 16 years. That she left nothing. That she left debt. That I was the reason she was gone. I picked up that note from my nightstand, read it one more time. Good luck. I folded it neatly, placed it in the drawer, and said, out loud, to no one, enough. I didn't know what came next, but I was done earning their love. I was 28 years old, and I was done. That was Tuesday. On Thursday, a man I'd never seen before knocked on my hospital room door. Before I get to the man at the door, I need to tell you what Harold was doing while I was calculating how to survive. He was managing the narrative. My phone buzzed Wednesday morning with a text from my Aunt Claire, Harold's sister, who I'd seen maybe 5 times in the last decade. Corinne, I saw your dad's email. I'm really disappointed in you. After everything he's done, I didn't know what she was talking about. An hour later, a college friend named Becca forwarded me the email. She wrote at the top, "Hey, is this real? This doesn't sound like you." The email was from Harold's personal address, sent to what looked like his entire contact list. Relatives, business associates, family friends. At least 30 people. The subject line, a difficult family update. I'll spare you most of it, but the key lines burned into my retina. Corinne has, unfortunately, burned through every opportunity we've given her. She's refused to take responsibility for her life and has blamed this family for her own choices. After years of support, we've made the painful decision to step back. For her own good. And then, at the end, the sentence that made my stomach drop. Her mother would be ashamed. Her mother would be ashamed. He wrote that about me, the daughter lying in a hospital bed, and sent it to everyone we knew. Diane's contribution was subtler. A comment on the family's private Facebook group. We tried everything. Sometimes you just have to let them fall so they learn. Praying for her. Praying, with a heart emoji. Within hours, my phone was full of messages from people I barely knew, all echoing Harold's version. We're so sorry your father had to go through this. We hope you get the help you need. No one asked me what happened. They didn't need to. Harold Andrews was the patriarch, the philanthropist, the self-made man, and I was just Corinne, the difficult one. Preston called Thursday morning. I almost didn't answer. But there was a part of me, the same stupid, stubborn part that had kept going back to that house for 28 years, that thought maybe he was calling to apologize. Maybe he'd seen the email and realized it had gone too far. Corinne. Not hey or how are you, just my name, flat, like he was confirming a reservation. Look, I'm going to be straight with you. Dad's being generous here. He could ask you to pay back every dollar he's spent on you over the years. He's choosing not to. You should take that as the gift it is. I just woke up from a coma, Preston. And you're fine now. You're talking, you're thinking, you're fine. The point is, Diane sent you some paperwork, a release form. You sign it, you move on with your life, we move on with ours. Clean break. I'd received the documents 2 days earlier. A courier had delivered them to my hospital room, a legal-looking packet from Harold's personal attorney, requesting that I sign a voluntary waiver of any and all claims to Andrew's family assets, properties, and holdings. I'd read it twice, confused. If my mother had left nothing, if Harold had cleaned up her debt, then what exactly was I waiving? What am I giving up, Preston? Dad told me Mom left nothing. A beat of silence. Then carefully. It's just a formality. Dad's reorganizing the estate for a new development deal. Some old trusts need to be cleaned up. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. Old trusts. I'm not signing anything I don't understand, I said. Corinne, I said no. He hung up. I sat there holding my cracked phone, and for the first time in 16 years, I didn't feel guilty. I felt suspicious. Why does a family that claims you have nothing need your signature to prove it? Diane came in person the next day. She arrived the way she always arrives, like she'd just stepped out of a magazine shoot. Cream cashmere coat, leather gloves, a small bouquet of white tulips. She smiled at the nurse's station, asked for my room in that honeyed voice, and I could hear them telling each other what a lovely woman as her heels clicked down the hallway. She closed the door behind her, set the tulips on the windowsill next to the dead carnations. Then she turned to face me, and the smile was gone. You're making this difficult, Corinne. I'm not signing those papers. Your father's deal closes in 6 weeks. This is the largest project of his career. If you cause problems, she smoothed her coat, choosing her words. He has relationships at every hospital in this region, board members, donors. One conversation and your little nursing career disappears. Do you understand what I'm saying? I understood perfectly. It wasn't a warning. It was a threat, delivered in the same gentle tone she used to tell me my bedroom was being moved to the attic. What am I signing away, Diane? If Mom left nothing, why does Dad need my signature? Something shifted in her face, a flicker, gone in an instant. Because the trust company won't. She stopped, pressed her lips together, then smooth as glass. Because it's just paperwork. Don't overthink it. The trust company. She heard herself say it. I saw it in her eyes, that split second of calculation, deciding whether to backtrack or plow forward. I'm not signing anything I don't understand, I said, and I'm done being scared of this family. Diane picked up her gloves, walked to the door. You were never as smart as you think you are, Corinne. That's always been your problem. She closed the door quietly. Diane never slams things. She doesn't need to. But she'd said it. Trust company. And suddenly, a torn envelope at the bottom of a moving box, and my grandmother's whisper at a funeral. They weren't random anymore. The next few days were the lowest point. My hospital bill sat on the rolling tray table like a small monument to everything I didn't have. $43,000. My bank account, $6,200. The math didn't care about my feelings. I called the billing department and arranged a payment plan, $400 a month, which I couldn't afford either, but it kept the collection calls at bay. My apartment lease was expiring. I had no car. My savings could cover maybe 6 weeks if I ate nothing but rice and eggs. The hospital social worker left pamphlets about financial assistance programs on my bed, and I filled them out at 2 a.m. with a pen that kept running out of ink. Meanwhile, the fallout from Harold's email continued. A co-worker at the hospital, someone I'd considered a friend, texted me, "Hey, I don't want to get involved, but someone said you have some issues going on. Just want you to know we're here for you." Harold hadn't directly said I had addiction problems. He'd just hinted in that careful way of his at choices and patterns and getting the help she needs. He knew exactly how to plant a seed without leaving fingerprints. I sat alone in that room at 3 in the morning, listening to the heart monitor down the hall and the hum of the heating system, and I thought about my mother. If you were here, I asked her silently, would you tell me to keep trying with them? Or would you tell me to run? And then another thought, clearer. I've been paying for a debt that was never mine. 16 years of apology for a storm I didn't cause. I was 28 years old, lying in a hospital bed, and I had nothing. No, that's not true. I had a question, and that question was worth everything. Grant called at 11 p.m. on a Tuesday, from a number I didn't recognize. Corey. His voice was low, rushed. I'm using a friend's phone. Dad put something on my line. I don't know, some kind of family plan tracker. He'd see I called you. Grant, are you okay? Listen to me. I should have said something a long time ago, and I didn't because I'm a coward, okay? I know that. But you need to hear this. I could hear him breathing hard, like he'd been running or was trying not to cry. My little brother, 26 years old and still terrified of our father. Before Grandma Eleanor died, he said, she told me something. She said Mom left something for you. Something real. Something Dad was supposed to give you when you turned 25. He never did. My hand tightened on the phone. 25. I was 28 now. 3 years passed. What was it? I don't know the details, but I found papers in Dad's office once. In the bottom drawer of his desk, the one he keeps locked. They had a logo on them. Some kind of trust or financial company. I can't remember the exact name, but it started with Hartford or Hartwell, maybe? Something like that. My whole body went cold. The torn envelope, the logo I'd thrown away. Dad caught me looking, Grant continued, his voice dropping even lower. He grabbed my arm so hard it bruised. He said if I ever mentioned Mom's papers again, he'd cut me off completely. That's the angriest I've ever seen him, Corey. Not yelling, quiet, like ice. I heard a voice in the background, Diane's, calling Grant's name. I have to go. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry I didn't tell you sooner. The line went dead. I had a name now, a trust company. And for the first time, I had somewhere to aim. I couldn't sleep that night. I lay in the dark, phone propped against my water pitcher, and Googled every variation I could think of. Hartford Trust Company, Connecticut. Hartwell Financial Trust. Trust Management, Connecticut. My hands were trembling, partly from the residual nerve damage in my left arm, partly from something else entirely. On the second page of results, I found it. Hartfield Trust and Fiduciary Services, Hartford, Connecticut. The logo matched. I was certain. That same serif typeface, the same navy and gold crest, the same logo from the torn envelope in my moving box. At 9:01 a.m. the next morning, the moment their office opened, I called. A receptionist answered. Professional, pleasant. I gave her my name. Corinne Andrews. I'm calling about a trust that may be in my name. I don't have the account number. I'm sorry, I don't really know. A pause. The sound of typing. Then her voice changed. Warmer. And something else. Concern. Ms. Andrews, please hold for 1 moment. 30 seconds of hold music. Then a man's voice, older, steady, the kind of voice that spent decades in conference rooms. Ms. Andrews, my name is Richard Calloway. I'm the managing trustee of the Margaret Ellis Andrews Irrevocable Trust. I have been trying to reach you for 3 years. I couldn't speak. We sent certified mail to your address on file, your father's residence in Greenwich, on 3 separate occasions. Each was signed for and accepted, but you never responded. I was beginning to think you didn't want to be found. Who signed for them? I whispered. A rustling of papers. The signature reads Diane Andrews, every time. The room tilted. I grabbed the bed rail. Mr. Calloway, I said, I need you to tell me everything. And he said gently, your mother anticipated this possibility, Ms. Andrews. That's exactly why she made the trust irrevocable. 2 days later, Richard Calloway walked into my hospital room carrying a brown leather briefcase that looked older than I was. Behind him was a man I'd never seen. Younger, maybe late 40s, in a navy suit with a small silver pin on his lapel that read Hartfield Trust. He introduced himself as Thomas Whitfield, Senior Fiduciary Officer. The man in the gray suit. Well, navy, close enough. Calloway sat in the visitor chair, the first person to actually use it since I'd woken up. He opened his briefcase on the rolling tray table, moving my water cup aside with a quiet, "May I?" that contained more courtesy than my father had shown me in a decade. Miss Andrews, he began. Your mother, Margaret Ellis Andrews, established an irrevocable trust in 2008, 2 years before her death. You are the sole beneficiary. The trust was funded by your maternal grandmother, Eleanor Ellis, and contains 2 primary assets. He placed the first document on the table. A copy of the trust instrument, 46 pages, with my mother's signature at the bottom. First, an investment account currently valued at approximately $2.1 million. I stopped breathing. Second, he placed another document beside it. A property deed, stamped and recorded with the county clerk. The real property at 14 Edgewater Lane, Greenwich, Connecticut. I stared at him. That's my father's house. No, Miss Andrews, it is not. Calloway's voice was precise, not unkind. Your mother purchased that home in 2004, 2 years before she married your father, using funds from her family inheritance. A prenuptial agreement kept it as separate property. Upon her death, it transferred into the trust. Your father has been living in that house for 16 years, but he has never owned it. Thomas Whitfield placed a third item on the table. 3 certified mail receipts, each signed Diane Andrews. Your father didn't just forget about you, Corinne, Calloway said quietly. He used what was yours to build what he thinks is his. I didn't say anything for a long time. The documents sat on that hospital tray like artifacts from another life, a life where my mother was still thinking of me, still protecting me, even from the grave. The trust instrument had her handwriting in the margins, small notes to her attorney, initials in blue ink. I traced one with my fingertip. She knew, I said, and my voice cracked. She knew what he was. Calloway nodded. Your mother was a careful woman. She came to me before the marriage and said very clearly that she wanted her daughter provided for, regardless of what happened. She didn't elaborate. She didn't need to. I thought about my grandmother Eleanor at the funeral, leaning close, whispering, Your mother made sure you'd be taken care of. I was 12. I thought she was talking about heaven. The tears came then, not the helpless, hollow crying from the night I'd woken up, but something deeper, like a wall giving way after years of pressure. I cried because my mother had loved me enough to plan for this. I cried because my father had hated me enough to hide it. And I cried because I'd spent 16 years apologizing for existing in a house that was mine. Calloway and Whitfield waited. They didn't rush me. When I finally wiped my face with the back of my hand, the one without the cast, Calloway asked, What would you like to do? I looked at him. At the deed, the trust papers, the certified mail receipts with Diane's stolen signatures. I want what's mine, and I want him to hear it from me, not from a letter. Calloway reached into his briefcase and pulled out an ivory envelope, thick, embossed. An invitation. The Andrews Foundation Charity Gala. Harold was being honored. Then we need to talk about timing, he said. Calloway laid it out clearly, the way I imagined he laid out every case. No drama, just facts. Harold had leveraged the Greenwich property, my property, as collateral for a $4.5 million commercial development deal. He'd submitted documentation to the lender claiming ownership, but the deed was in my mother's name, transferred to the trust upon her death. Harold had never held title. What he'd done was, at minimum, a misrepresentation of asset ownership. At worst, it was mortgage fraud. The lender is First Capital Regional, Whitfield said, opening a folder with the bank's letterhead. If they discover the collateral doesn't belong to Mr. Andrews, the loan is void, the deal collapses. What do I need to do? I asked. Legally, 2 things, Calloway said. 1. We file a formal notification with First Capital that the property used as collateral is held in trust and was never available as security. 2. We petition to transfer operational control of the trust assets to you, which should have happened 3 years ago when you turned 25. He paused. Both actions are straightforward. The question is how and when. I told him I didn't want to ambush anyone. I didn't want a spectacle. But I also didn't want to do this through letters that Harold could intercept, or phone calls he could deny, or lawyers he could stall with his own lawyers for months while I slept in my car. I want the truth to be in the room where he usually lies, I said. Calloway studied me for a moment. Then he said, The gala is in 12 days. Harold is being honored. The deal is scheduled to be formally announced that evening. Representatives from First Capital will be present. He placed the property deed on top of the stack. I could see the county seal, the date, 2004, 2 years before the wedding, my mother's name in clear type. Your mother prepared the shield, Corinne. I'm simply here to make sure you know you're holding it. I was discharged on a Thursday. Grant helped, quietly, the way Grant does everything. He booked a room at a Hampton Inn in Hartford using his own card and texted me the confirmation number from a burner phone he'd bought at a gas station. "Don't tell Dad," he said, and I didn't point out the absurdity of that sentence, that we were grown adults, hiding from our own father like runaways. The hotel room was small, clean, anonymous. A queen bed with a floral bedspread, a coffee maker with 2 packets of complimentary grounds, a window that looked out on a parking lot. It was the most peaceful place I'd been in weeks. I spent the first 3 days just healing, walking laps around the hallway in my socks because my ribs screamed every time I took a deep breath, eating soup from the diner next door, sleeping 12 hours at a stretch because my body was still stitching itself back together. On the 4th day, I stood in front of the bathroom mirror and practiced. Not a speech. I'm not a speech person. Just the sentences I needed. 3, maybe 4. I said them to my reflection until they stopped shaking. Calloway had messengered me a manila folder. Inside were copies of everything: the trust instrument, the deed, the certified mail receipts, the prenuptial agreement. And one more thing I hadn't asked for: a copy of the police accident report from March 7th, 16 years ago. I held that report for 20 minutes before I opened it. My hands were trembling. I knew somehow that whatever was inside would change something fundamental, not about the money or the house, but about the story I'd been telling myself since I was 12 years old. I wasn't ready. Not yet. The gala was in 10 days. And somewhere in Greenwich, my father was rehearsing his acceptance speech, standing in a house that didn't belong to him, preparing to announce a deal built on a lie. He had no idea what was coming, but honestly, neither did I. The Andrews Foundation Charity Gala was held at the Delamar, Greenwich's most exclusive boutique hotel. I know this because the invitation Calloway had given me described it in detail. Cocktails at 6, dinner at 7:30, program at 8. Black tie preferred. Valet parking available. I arrived at 8:15. I didn't take the valet. From the lobby I could hear it. The low roar of 200 people in a ballroom, the clink of champagne flutes, a string quartet playing something tasteful and forgettable. Through the double doors I caught glimpses of the room: cathedral ceilings, crystal chandeliers casting warm circles on white tablecloths, arrangements of white lilies and hydrangeas on every surface. The kind of event where the flowers alone cost more than my monthly rent. Harold was on stage. He stood behind a podium draped in navy fabric, wearing a Brioni suit I'd seen him try on at the Greenwich tailor 3 years ago. Diane was at the front table in a black Valentino dress, her hair swept up, diamond studs catching the light. Preston sat beside her, looking the way Preston always looks, like he was already thinking about his next meeting. The master of ceremonies, a city councilman, was mid-introduction. A philanthropist, a visionary developer, and above all, a devoted family man, Harold Andrews. Applause. Standing ovation from the front tables. Harold took the mic. He thanked the foundation. He thanked his beautiful wife Diane. He thanked my son Preston, who will carry the Andrews name forward. He gestured broadly, magnanimously, the way men like Harold gesture when they believe the room belongs to them. Then he said it. This development project is built on land and assets that have been in my family for decades. Everything I have, I built with my own hands. I stood in the back of that ballroom, next to Richard Calloway and Thomas Whitfield, and I watched my father lie to 200 people. It was the last lie he'd tell in that room. I waited until the applause faded and the waitstaff began pouring the next round. Then I walked in. I wasn't dressed for a gala. I wore a dark blazer over a white blouse, the nicest thing I owned that still fit over my cast, and black trousers. My hair was in a low bun, simple, tight. No jewelry except a pair of small silver studs that had been my mother's. I walked slowly, partly because the room was long and partly because my ribs still sent a sharp reminder with every step. Calloway was to my left, briefcase in hand, gray suit pressed. Whitfield to my right, his Hartfield trust pin catching the chandelier light. We must have looked like a strange procession, a battered woman and 2 men in suits, moving through a sea of evening gowns and tuxedos. Heads turned, conversations paused mid-sentence. I heard someone whisper, "Is that Harold's daughter?" Diane saw me first. I watched the color drain from her face in real time, a slow, descending erasure, like someone had pulled a plug. She leaned toward Harold and said something I couldn't hear. Harold turned. His public face, the one made for galas and handshakes, flickered, then reset. He came down from the podium with his champagne glass still in hand, smiling the way you smile when you need 200 people to think everything is fine. Corinne, his voice was warm, projected. What a surprise. I didn't think you were well enough to be out. The room watched. I looked at my father, this man who'd left me a note on a nightstand, who'd told me at 12 that I killed my mother, who'd lived in her house and spent her money and erased her memory and called it his own. I'm standing, Dad, I said. That's more than you planned for. The silence that followed filled every corner of the room. Harold's smile tightened. I knew that look. The one he used when a meeting wasn't going his way, but the client was still in the room. Control at all costs. This isn't the time or the place, Corinne, he said, low enough to sound private, loud enough that the nearest tables heard every word. Why don't we step outside and— You had 28 years to talk outside, I said. You left me a note. A murmur rippled through the crowd. People set down their forks. Diane was already on her feet, crossing toward us with that smile locked in place. The one that says everything's fine, nothing to see. Corinne, sweetie, you've clearly been through a lot. She touched my arm, gently, performatively. Maybe you should sit down. You don't look well. I turned to her. I kept my voice even. Diane, I'd like you to explain to everyone here why you signed for certified mail addressed to me 3 times and never told me. The hand on my arm went rigid. Diane's lips parted, but nothing came out. Harold's smile vanished. What is she talking about? Before Diane could answer, Richard Calloway stepped forward. He unbuttoned his suit jacket with the practiced ease of a man who'd stood in 1,000 rooms exactly like this one. He nodded politely to the tables nearest us. Good evening. My name is Richard Calloway. I'm the managing trustee of the Margaret Ellis Andrews Irrevocable Trust, established in 2008 by the late Mrs. Andrews. He looked directly at Harold. My client, your daughter, is the sole beneficiary of a trust you were legally obligated to disclose to her 6 years ago. He paused. Shall we continue here, Mr. Andrews? Or would you prefer to step outside? Harold didn't move. His jaw was locked, his champagne glass frozen at chest level. 200 people waited. He chose to stay. Of course he did. Men like Harold don't leave rooms. They believe the room will always side with them. That was his second mistake. This is absurd, Harold said. His voice carried. He made sure of it. He set his champagne glass on the nearest table and turned to face Calloway with the posture of a man accustomed to winning disputes by sheer presence. My late wife didn't have a trust. Whatever this woman has told you, she's either confused or she's been manipulated. This woman. He called me this woman in front of 200 people. Calloway didn't flinch. He opened his briefcase on the edge of the nearest table, between a bread plate and a crystal water glass, and laid out 3 documents in a neat row. This, he said, is the original trust instrument, signed by Margaret Ellis Andrews and notarized on October 14, 2008. This is the property deed for 14 Edgewater Lane, Greenwich, recorded with the county clerk on March 21, 2004, 2 years before your marriage. And these are 3 certified mail receipts sent to that same address, intended for your daughter, each one signed by Diane Andrews. The room had gone so quiet, I could hear the ice melting in someone's water glass. Harold glanced at the documents. I watched his expression shift. Just barely, just for a second, from contempt to recognition. He knew those papers. He'd known about them all along. At the VIP table, a tall man in a dark suit stood up. I'd learn later his name was Hargrove, a senior officer at First Capital Regional, the bank funding Harold's $4.5 million deal. Harold, Hargrove said, is the property you submitted as collateral the same property referenced in these documents? Harold's mouth opened, closed, opened again. Preston, sitting at the family table, leaned forward. Dad, what's going on? Harold looked at Calloway, at the deed, at me. That house is mine, he said, but his voice had lost something. I've lived there for 16. Living in a home and owning it, Calloway said quietly, are two very different things, Mr. Andrews. The room broke, not loudly. This was Greenwich, after all, but I heard it. The low hum of 200 people recalculating everything they thought they knew about Harold Andrews. Chairs creaked as people shifted to watch. Phones appeared under tables. Someone near the back stood up to get a better view. Hargrove, the banker, walked from his VIP table to where we stood. His face was the controlled blank of a man whose institution had just been told their $4.5 million loan was built on collateral that didn't exist. "Mr. Andrews," he said, and his voice was very calm. "If the property you pledged as security is held in an irrevocable trust and was never legally yours to offer, we cannot proceed with the transaction. The deal is suspended, effective immediately. Our legal team will be in contact Monday morning." Harold's face went white. Not pink, not red, white. The blood simply left. "Robert, listen to me," Harold started. "I've heard enough tonight," Hargrove said. He straightened his cuffs. "I'd suggest you speak with your attorney before you speak with me again." He walked back to his table, collected his coat, and left the ballroom without looking back. And then Diane turned on Harold. I'd never heard her voice at that pitch, raw, stripped of every layer of cashmere sweetness. "You told me the house was yours," she hissed. "You told me the papers were handled. You told me there was nothing to worry about." Harold. "Diane, not now. I signed those letters because you told me to. You said it was old paperwork, nothing important." "Diane, stop talking." But it was too late. 200 people had just heard Diane admit in her own words that Harold had instructed her to intercept my mail. The room didn't gasp. It just absorbed. And I watched, from 5 feet away, as everything my father had built turned to glass and shattered on the ballroom floor. I could have stopped there. The deal was done. The truth about the house was out. Calloway had what he needed. But there was one more thing. The document I'd been carrying in the inside pocket of my blazer since I'd finally read it alone in that Hampton Inn 3 nights ago. "There's something else," I said. Harold looked at me. For the first time that night, I saw fear in his eyes. Not the calculating, controlled anxiety of a man losing a deal, but real fear. The kind that comes when you realize the lie you built your life on is about to be said out loud. I pulled out the police accident report. My hands were steady. I'd practiced this. "For 16 years, I said. You told me that my mother died because of me. You told me she drove out into that storm because I called her. You let me carry that. You used it. Every time I questioned you, every time I pushed back, you'd bring it up. Your mother drove out in that storm because of you. I heard it so many times I started dreaming about it." The room was absolutely still. "The police report from that night says something different." I held it up. "It says that you, Harold Andrews, agreed to pick me up from the school recital at 8:30. It says that my mother called your cell phone 5 times between 8:45 and 9:10. You never answered, because you were at a poker game on Fairfield Avenue, and you'd turned off your phone." I looked at him. "Mom didn't drive into that storm because I called her. She drove into it because you didn't show up. And then you blamed a 12-year-old girl to cover your own guilt." Harold's mouth moved, but no sound came out. Behind him, at the family table, Grant was staring at the floor, tears running down his face. Preston sat frozen, his hand flat on the tablecloth as if the table was the only thing keeping him upright. I didn't ask for an apology. I'd stopped waiting for one a long time ago. "The lie ends tonight," I said. What happened next, I didn't expect. Grant stood up. He'd been sitting at the family table all evening, silent, the way he always was at these events. Present, but invisible, the second son who never challenged Harold, who swallowed his words and went along. I'd spent years being frustrated with him for that, and years understanding it, because I'd done the same thing. But he stood up, pushed his chair back slowly, wiped his face with the back of his hand, and walked away from our father's table toward me. Every head in the room turned to follow him. He stopped in front of me, and his voice cracked on the first word. "I knew," he said, not to me, to the room. "Not everything, but enough. I knew there were papers Dad was hiding. I knew something was wrong about the way he talked about Mom, and I was too scared to say anything. He looked at me, eyes red. Corey, I'm sorry. I should have been braver. I should have been your brother. Harold's voice cut across the room like a blade. Grant, sit down. Grant turned to face him. My 26-year-old brother, who'd never once disobeyed Harold Andrews in his life, looked at our father and said very quietly, No, Dad, I'm done sitting down. Diane reached for Grant's arm, reflexive, possessive. He pulled away. You intercepted her mail, Diane. Don't touch me. Grant came and stood beside me. He didn't say anything else. He didn't need to. For the first time in 16 years, I wasn't standing alone in a room full of people who'd decided I didn't matter. I felt his hand brush mine, just briefly, the way you reach for someone when you want them to know you're there without making a scene. A few guests near the back of the ballroom set down their napkins. One couple stood and walked to our side of the room. Then another. Not many, maybe 8, 10 people, but enough. Harold Andrews sat down. Not dramatically. There was no stagger, no clutching of the chest. He simply pulled out a chair at the nearest empty table and sat. His Brioni suit was still perfectly pressed. His hair was still in place. But something behind his eyes had gone dark, like a house where someone had turned off all the lights at once. He didn't speak. No defense, no counterattack, no, you don't understand. Just silence. And from a man who'd controlled every room he'd ever walked into, that silence said more than any confession could. Diane was already gone. I saw the tail of her Valentino dress disappear through the service exit, her heels clicking double time on the tile. She didn't look back. Preston followed 3 seconds later, phone already to his ear, calling who, I don't know. A lawyer, probably. Maybe his mother. The golden child, finally realizing that the throne he'd been promised was built on borrowed ground. Calloway stepped forward, spoke briefly to one of Hargrove's associates who'd remained behind, and handed over a card. I heard him say, My office will send formal documentation to First Capital on Monday. The county records are public. Quiet, professional, final. I looked at my father one more time. He was sitting alone at a table set for 10. The champagne was still cold in the glasses around him. The lilies were still fresh. The program on his plate still read, Honoring Harold Andrews, a legacy of leadership. I thought about saying something. Some final line, some definitive sentence that would close the book on 28 years of silence and guilt, and trying and failing to matter. But I didn't. There was nothing left to say. I turned and walked out, my brother beside me, through a ballroom that was already beginning to murmur again. The sound of a story being retold in real time. I thought I'd feel triumph. I didn't. What I felt was quiet, like a room after a storm. Here's what happened in the 3 months after that night. Calloway filed the formal trust transfer petition the following Monday. Because the trust was irrevocable and I was the named beneficiary, the process was clean, delayed only by the sheer volume of documentation Harold's side tried to throw at it. His attorney requested extensions twice. The court denied both. By early June, I had full control of the trust assets, the investment account, now valued at $2.13 million after years of modest, steady growth, and the deed to 14 Edgewater Lane. Harold was formally notified that his residency at the property was at the discretion of the trust beneficiary. I gave him 30 days to vacate. It was more than he gave me. First Capital Regional voided the $4.5 million development loan. Their legal team referred Harold's file to the State Attorney General's office for review of potential mortgage fraud and misrepresentation of collateral. His own attorney advised him to settle before it escalated. The legal fees alone, I was told, were projected to exceed $200,000. Diane filed for divorce in mid-May. Her attorney cited irreconcilable differences, but the timing told the real story. When the money disappeared, so did Diane. I'd have felt sorry for Harold if I were a more generous person, but I'd seen the note on my nightstand too recently for generosity. Preston called me once. I didn't answer. He left a voicemail, 4 minutes long, full of pauses and throat clearing, that amounted to, I didn't know the full picture, Corinne. If there's anything I can do, I deleted it, not out of spite, out of clarity. Preston had spent his entire adult life choosing the winning side. Now that the sides had changed, his call wasn't remorse. It was repositioning. The Andrews Foundation Charity Gala was not held the following year. No one volunteered to organize it. I sold the Greenwich house in July. I know some people might think that's strange. A $3.2 million property. The place I grew up, the last physical thing my mother touched. But that house held more ghosts than memories. Every hallway, every room, every floorboard was layered with years of silence and smallness. The attic bedroom with the sloped ceiling, the kitchen where I washed Thanksgiving dishes while Preston showed off his car, the front door Diane closed in my face. I didn't need a mansion, I needed a life that was mine. I found an apartment in West Hartford, 2 bedrooms, hardwood floors, big windows that fill the living room with morning light. It's a 3rd-floor walk-up, which my ribs protested for the first month, but I didn't care. I signed the lease with my own name, and when I set my bag down on the empty floor, I stood there for a full minute just breathing. I went back to nursing. A new hospital, a new team, a fresh badge that says C. Andrews, RN, and nothing else. Nobody here knows about the gala, or the trust, or the house in Greenwich. They know me as the night shift nurse who's good in a crisis and brings homemade banana bread to staff meetings. That's enough. Grant and I have dinner every Thursday. We go to the same Italian place near his apartment. Red checkered tablecloths, candles in wine bottles, the kind of restaurant where nobody's trying to impress anyone. We talk about real things now, not the careful surface-level exchanges we used to have while Harold monitored every conversation. Real things, hard things. He started therapy in April. I started in May. And on my bookshelf, next to a small jade plant and a stack of novels I keep meaning to read, is a framed photo of my mother. Silver frame, simple. She's laughing, holding me as a baby, her Cartier watch glinting in the sun. For the first time in 16 years, I look at that photo, and I don't feel guilt. I feel gratitude. I spent 16 years apologizing for existing. I believed my father's version of the story, that I was the reason my mother died, that I deserved less, that I should be grateful for whatever crumbs the family table offered. I built my entire identity around being sorry. The day I stopped was the day I started living. If you're still here, and I hope you are, thank you. Not for watching, for listening. There's a difference, and it matters. I don't know what your version of that note on the nightstand looks like. Maybe it's a text that was never returned. Maybe it's a door that was never opened. Maybe it's a silence that stretched on for so long you've started to think it's normal. I don't know your story, but I know this. You are not the story someone else wrote about you. You are not the name they called you at the dinner table, or the chair they didn't set, or the mail they intercepted before you could read it. I didn't win because I was smarter or louder. I didn't win because I stormed in with some brilliant revenge plan. I won because my mother thought ahead, and because one morning in a hospital bed, holding a note that said good luck, I decided I was done being sorry. My mother left me more than money. She left me proof that someone, once, thought I was worth protecting. And that was enough to make me believe it myself. My name is Corinne Andrews. I grew up in a house that turned out to be mine. I was raised by a man who told me I was nothing, and a mother who quietly made sure I'd always have everything. And now, for the first time, that name is mine. If this story meant something to you, leave a comment. I read every one. And if you know someone who needs to hear this, a sister, a daughter, a friend who's still sitting in that lobby waiting for someone to show up, share it with them. There are more stories in the description that I think you'll connect with. Thank you for being here. It means more than you know.